Hello, my name's Craig Wood. We're going to talk about a bit about hazel, because it's my favourite tree. They provide an amazing amount of habitat for wildlife within a woodland. Hazel we normally would coppice around about 7 years after it's matured. So every 7 years we're redoing this process. So if you had a woodland that was full of hazel, what you'd do is you divide your woodland into 7 compartments, and each year you would coppice a single area. By then moving round each year, you create the same conditions in another part of the woodland while that piece of woodland is allowed to carry on and develop. Obviously the plant itself, things will live on the leaves, so eating the leaves and eating the sort of pollen and the buds off the tree. But obviously hazel itself produces the nuts, it's hazelnut. Coppicing is a process by which you cut down a deciduous tree with the aim that that's going to resprout with lots of shoots. We coppice with the idea that we're going to regenerate the tree. Coppicing can occur naturally, so if you imagine a big oak tree falling in a woodland and landing on lots of smaller trees, that will naturally coppice. It won't be a smooth cut, it'll be a nice frayed cut, and that will then start to come up and you'll get all these stems coming up. We're going to create a much better habitat for lots of flora and fauna. So by coppicing we're allowing the light to get down to the ground floor, which is going to encourage lots of flowering plants, which will then encourage lots of insect species like beetles and bees and butterflies. Traditionally people think about the dormouse when they think about hazel, because they love coppiced hazel. The stems as they grow will create a sort of network of branches which is quite dense. So all that regrowth creates a really good network of branches. So you imagine all those branches sort of springing out sideways. If there's another hazel next to it doing the same, you end up with this little walkway. Dormice are really fussy. They don't like to walk around the floor. They don't like to get their feet wet, and they're a bit scared of heights, so they don't like walking in the canopy. So they love this network of low branches that they can walk between. Now, because we don't really do too much coppicing these days, the dormouse is struggling a little bit. Initially we will have cut down a single tree. That would be the first process. So that single tree could be used for firewood, it could be used for creating habitat. So leaving the dead wood on site is the best thing to do with it, really. Leave that on site and that will degrade, and you get lots of mini beasts that will live in amongst the material. The actual coppice product, so once you've coppiced it once, you get a lot of very straight rods, and they are really straight in hazel. They're really lovely, which is why it's so prized. So from hazel we can make hurdles, which are wooden woven panels. Those were used in traditional house building, and then we would have covered those with daub, so actually sort of mud and dung to create panels within houses. More today, my sort of favourite thing is sort of den building poles. So children love to make dens using hazel poles. That's a really good use for them. They're also used for thatching spars. So when you put a thatched roof on, you have to attach them to the roof, and you use a broken stem of hazel to attach the thatch to the roof. So one of the things that I like to make from coppiced hazel is a talking stick. And you're probably asking yourself, what is a talking stick? Okay, so a talking stick is a traditional method of allowing people to have their voices heard in certain parts of the world. So you basically pass the stick around. If you've got the stick, you're allowed to talk and you have your voice and everyone else has to listen. I particularly like hazel because it's quite stable and it's has quite interesting forms within the actual branches and stems itself. Relatively easy to carve when it's still green, so it's still fresh off the tree. And it's a byproduct of something I'm doing for wildlife anyway, so that's another good reason to use hazel, because I'm not cutting down a tree for no reason.